Alrighty, chummers. I've been doing some more work on my Storm the Matrix game system. I do think at this point I've got enough for like the MVP minimum viable product to at least start play testing. There's still a lot of stuff that does not exist yet. A bunch of like classes missing and races that I still haven't fleshed out yet. But I think there's at least enough to like maybe run through a session just to test out the dice mechanics and make sure this like functions as a game at all. Now, so I'm just gonna go over what I've like written so far and what changes I've made and all that yada yada. So I guess I'm going to start off with the lore. It is the year of Bardoomburger. This is the reference to tell me you just read Infinite Jest without just telling me you read that. And by read, I mean read the Wikipedia article, because, you know, that's like a 1,000-page long book or something. But I love that idea of the calendar, the like every single aspect of society and culture being sold to corporations, like anything that can be commodified, it has been, and like anything that could be used to be sold for advertisement or to be used to make more money, like all of that has been done. Okay, so the Corpo clans. So back in the age of fantasy and of heroes and of dragons and all of that, there were 10 great clans of Veilguard, each with like their own specialty. Like the honor miners were all in on being the best miners of all the dwarves. Clan Tabul was all in on being the most religious and creating the clerics and the priests and all of that. And of Veilguard, there was also the Council Under the Mountain, of which like the highest ups of the various clans would meet to like solve problems that faced Veilguard as a city as a whole. And since then, all the different clans have evolved into full corporations. And the council has been like greatly reduced in power to the point where, and now instead of functioning as any kind of like central government or like UN organization or anything like that, or like European Union where like they kind of were in the past, now they basically just function as like the CIA, where when there's like great threats to the city by either means of like people messing with this universe's version of the internet, or with like if some wizards try to pull some crazy magic shenanigans, they are there to deal with those kinds of problems, and all the clans are willing to work together to solve threats that like threaten all of them as a whole. But other than that, they have become much more independent and are constantly like stealing from each other, and trying to like take whatever they can. Okay, so the first Corpo clan we have, the Honor Miners, have become HM Metals and Minerals. So they control all extraction and distribution of all natural resources. They are like cutting down forest for lumber, going into mines for coal and cobalt and silicon and gold, and they do all extraction of natural resources. Runekin Magic and Power, they are in control of all forms of energy and the distribution of energy. The main source of power in Veilguard comes from like magicite, which is like this like mineral, this stone that occurs when when there's too much magic used in a single area, and it is just this like just the like raw building blocks that are like manipulated in order to use magic, just like condensed and down into like a like manifested into just like a pure stone that can be like manipulated it's effectively like magic uranium, and it's like way more dangerous than uranium because it's way more unpredictable, and like sometimes demons will pop out and just totally crazy stuff will happen with it sometimes. But it does just have like the ability to be used to generate tons and tons and tons of energy. Okay, so the Commerson consumer goods, they just make all clothing, electronics, basically like anything you're ever buying at like Walmart or something like that. Bardum Food and Booze, they produce all food and all like anything that people are like eating or drinking or anything to deal with any of that. Kazade Transit, they run all the effectively airlines, and they create like cars and sell and they control like the trains and anything that has to do with transportation. Doomkin Security, they create all like military security stuff, all guns and mechs and stuff like that. Tabul Media, so they just run all the any form of entertainment and news, or basically anything, like all like propaganda stuff and anything like that. Stonebeard Concrete, they just create all the buildings and everything. Gem Cutter Data Management, so they are like the AT&T. They control all the internet, and this is called the meta plane, which is a sort of like artificial demi plane that has been created and is shared between everyone. And yeah, so these guys have control over like what is effectively the internet and like everyone's access and all their data stored on the internet. Bulber Sheldon Biotech, so these guys create all medical everything and the cyberware and the pharmaceuticals and all of that. So the CEOs of these various corporations have just grown like so immensely in power that the idea of like killing them is effectively impossible at this point. They've got so many like clerics and such on their payroll that can, true resurrect them if they die, and or some combination of having uploaded their consciousness to the meta plane so that they can like just be put into a new automaton if they die, and be like re-uploaded, or like having become like a lich and just to like almost Emperor of Mankind wise, just having like people delivered to them to like be sacrificed and take their souls to continue their lichdom. So it's, I don't want to necessarily say entirely impossible to put an end to any of these CEOs of any of these corporations, but they've effectively become like too big to fail, too big to die at this point. Okay, so the dwarven gods have all just become super commodified as well. People don't worship them as they like used to with rituals and churches and stuff. Or if they do, they've become like a sort of bastardized version of like buying and selling stuff in the name of these gods. Okay, so the United Realms of Amar, which once was the 12 Kingdoms, they've just gone all in on the theocratic, like almost V for Vendetta-esque, just like hyper authoritarian, super religious state. Oh, so the Genius Loci, the Yazata, the local gods of the world that were like the gods of like the forest or the god of the river or the god of the mountain, stuff like that. They have all generally been like eliminated and terminated because they've all been and or captured and like harvested, because they would all like prevent the corporations from expanding and extracting more resources. And now with all this new technology, like the corporations have the means of straight up killing these straight up gods. So the Rose Court principalities, the elves have gone all in on their like super beautiful everything, all in on aesthetics and all of that. Mm. Skalor, the raised islands of Skalor the Raised, I believe, has sort of devolved back into civil war. And this war is like funded by the dwarves who are like selling weapons and arms to like both sides to just continue this conflict. Because if the dragons, the chromatic and metallic dragons, ever did team up, then they would actually conceivably have the means to rival the powers of the Corpo clans. So they really don't want that to happen. The Freelands, since the dragons can't really do full real colonialism anymore, they've sort of like devolved into like a neo-colonial state, uh, like a post-imperialist, where like some of the men of the Freelands are finally able to like start reclaiming their homes, and like there's still lots of remnants of the Dragon Empire being there, but they no longer have like the funding from their homeland, so they are like slowly. So again, the Freelance has just like also become just like a full-on war, but uh yeah. So okay, so how we got to this point to begin with, how the clans became the Corpo clans, the war of waste between the dwarves of Veilguard and then the like Jin and the giants of the Sultanates. They went to war. Then there was like a bunch of magic nukes that got fired at each other. The city of Veilguard effectively got razed, and the Sultanates got razed. But the clans were all like deep underground and in their mountains, so they were relatively unharmed, and they came back out, and then they rebuilt the city into Neo Veilguard, the new Veilguard. And now like the Sultanates has become like a wasteland, like full on fallout, just nothing but sand and radiation and mutants and stuff. So the city of Maladul has become starting to get like recolonized by the elves. So this like once ancient city of the elves, that has since been like conquered by like demons and drow. The elves are finally making headway into reclaiming it. So there's a lot of contention between the high elves and the wood elves. A lot of the wood elves are upset that they're not going to become the like, even though they were here and they were fighting for Maladul this whole time. The high elves sort of just swoop in and have started their whole process. So some wood elves are willing to work with them, even though they know the high elves aren't going to treat them very well. Other wood elves say like, screw that, we're going to basically start doing terrorist stuff. So yeah, so the dwarves, since they like nuked the sultanates, which have otherwise been like surrounding Maladul, they kind of opened up this opportunity for the elves to move in. So Indistan, which was previously like colonized and controlled by the Rakshasas and the Yuan Ti of the sultanates, now that that power structure no longer exists, they have become free, and they're like the one good place to live in the world right now. They've sort of got like an enlightened democracy thing going on. They're like in their golden age right now. The Poison Princes, they are going all in on like organotech, kind of like that movie Existenzi, or like a Videodrome. Lots of those like biomechanical computers, stuff like that. The Spite Lords. Oh, I forgot. There was something I wanted to add to that. Oh, right. Yeah, so they got lots of heads. They got they've got like a sort of neo-fascism thing going on. And then extraplanar colonies. There's a bit of like a Rapture and Bioshock, The rich people are trying to create an underwater city in the elemental plane of water, known as Aqua Centauri. That is right now kind of like a luxury, like hotel destination place for people to hang out at. But I'm sure that's probably not going to stay that way forever. Okay, so now onto the other organizations, the different gangs and such. The Muezan nomads, they are followers of Mueza, the desert fox, the anti slavery, the god of all that freedom and everything. They're really upset with this whole Corpo clan situation, so they just take a lot of actions to try to stop this from happening and blowing up corporate buildings and stuff like that. The Sicilians, the Croca Nostra, they are the Frog Fathers, or they have evolved out of what were the Frog Fathers in the past. Their whole thing is frog puns, apparently, I guess. But they are just like the family based mafia type. The Seven Oni Alliance. This is kind of the Yakuza stand-in. They are from Skalor, and they're just like another crime syndicate in Neo Veilguard. The Daughters of Anara, they are very upset that the corporations have been killing Yazadas, because these guys are sort of the like pagan worshippers of the local gods, and now like a whole bunch of their local gods are being killed. So they are doing some like eco-terrorism stuff. They got lots of like druid powers and druid magic going on. The Illuminated Few. This is the straight up like Illuminati secret organization of wizards that no one knows exists, but is trying in the background to puppeteer everything to fall into what they want. The Trajan Society. These are sort of like the foot soldiers for the Illuminated Few. These are like wizards that are running around and generally upset with this whole internet thing, this whole creation of the meta plane and how that's sort of been interfering with magic. And yeah, so they're running around doing wizard terrorist stuff. This is the gang that they are the like hack the planet, the meta plane for the people kind of guys. They like, they're sort of your anonymous gang of hackers. They are. There was a Warforged named I Am back in the age of like heroes and magic that they like idolize. The Hundanites, they worship the Hundun, the like the forgotten gods, the like ancient aberration, evil, eldritch old ones that just want to like tear everything down. They are like nihilists for the sake of nihilism, just destroy everything, kill everyone. Super terrorists, not even for any point, just to destroy stuff. They got lots of ogres and minotaurs. So the Cult of the Watcher. This is the like general security force of this city, the cops, and this is slightly stolen from Cruelty Squad. I do like that idea of like the one last bastion of true like religious servitude and like religious ritual in the city is that of the god of the Watcher of the Dwarven Cycle of Commerce, where they like take this very seriously and do lots of like sermons and stuff, but they are just like they are just like the city's law enforcement agency. Okay. Oh yeah, I liked this idea of like using hounds, which I guess is kind of basically the Suicide Squad. You take in prisoners and give them an explosive collar and tell them what to do, or else you're gonna blow up their head. Specifically, though, this one is stolen from that one anime like Oda Tokyo City 088, something like that. I forget exactly what it's called. But yeah, okay. So the guilds are sort of like the unions, but specifically, I imagine them much more so like that Jimmy Hoffa era, like unions as controlled by the mob, like times 100. Um, yeah, but this is what like all the various guilds of the like of that heroic era, House Alai and um, House Zambi, have like sort of evolved into. Um, okay, so the Burner Boys. This is sort of my generic stand-in for like if I just need one generic go-to gang of goons. These are like the generic thugs. They are all in on vehicles and going fast. I imagine them probably doing a lot of those, like the Akira bikes, all of those. They got lots of fire motifs, pyromaniacs. They got orcs and goblinoids. The vicissitudes. These guys are kind of like the pranksters. They are sort of like the jokers. I'm a dog chasing cars kind of guys. They're kind of also like nihilistic and like terroristy for not for necessarily the sake of anything in particular, but just for the fun of it. These guys use lots of like magic and organotech and stuff like that. The heads, these guys have evolved out of the like worshippers of the Tyrant. They're effectively like fascist skinhead type of gangs. The Grid Overwatch Department, the G-Men, this is the CIA. They just keep watch of magic activity and of like metaplane, abusement or whatever. So these guys, like, basically, if you start being way too obvious, and if you start trying to pull way too crazy of schemes, if you start causing way too much damage, then you're gonna basically get a bunch of Agent Smiths like teleported to your location, and they've got all the best magic and all the best equipment, and they will just deal with you like without much of a problem. Now, okay. So the different archetypes. So I had my 6 classes I was running off of. These guys. Okay, so the game is primarily based around Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark has these playbooks, which are effectively your class, but I wanted to do like, so Blades in the Dark also has this thing where like making a character is only going to ever take like 5 minutes. You just pick a playbook and then check off some things, and then bip bop booey, you're done. So, and also Blades in the Dark, very like ostensibly like there's supposed to be a low focus on any individual character and a high focus on the crew as a whole. I definitely wanted to move things more in a character-based direction, so I took some more influence from Fate with the different aspects of each character. So creating a character in this version is, instead of like the 5 minutes of Blaze in the Dark, this is probably going to be like a full D&D, like hour-long, proper sit down and write down and figure out everything about your character. But these archetypes were basically going to be like 6. So character creation was going to be like fully like free form. There's no classes or anything. You just pick series of attributes and skills and traits from a big long list, and like almost like GURPS-esque in that you'll just have tons and tons and tons of options, and you can just pick and choose whatever you want to make your character how you want it. And these archetypes are going to just basically be like 6 pre-made characters for like the 6 general big like types of character that like you could possibly want in a party. And So if you did want to do like just a 5 minute character creation, you could just take one of these archetypes, one of these pre-made characters, and then just change around whatever you wanted. So like if you wanted to be like a street samurai, you could just pick the soldier, and if you didn't want to be a dwarf, you could swap it out with elf or make whatever changes you wanted to. But otherwise, just have a character ready and done. These guys still have not finished to them yet. I'll probably like figure out like before I do a test what kind of characters people want to play, and then go out of my way to finish those first. And then they can work off of that. So yeah, so character creation. This is the character sheet I've got so far. It is so you can see the attributes and skills based off of like Vampire the Masquerade aspects taken from Fate. Edge is stress taken from Blades in the Dark, or edge from Runners in the Shadows, which is like the other pre-made Blades in the Dark Shadowrun hack that's been created. Yeah, so you got your harm, which is like your health, your contacts, your karma, which is like your XP, your augments, your cybernetics, your traits, which are like your abilities, your gear, all your inventory, and all of that. Okay, so you create your character, where are you from, distribute your skills and your attributes. So another thing, I'm moving away from Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark has very abstracted money. Like you just have a number of coin, which like you might have like 3 coin, and then a coin is equal to a hefty purse, and then if you have like 10 coin, that's like a vault filled with treasure. I get where they're going with that, but especially in this like super hyper corporate where like everything about money matters and like everything about society is all about money. I wanted to make sure that you could really interact with it. So I decided to go granular with the money. Okay, so yeah, so your backstory, why'd you become a runner, your aspects, and then crew creation. So unlike D&D, there is also going to be a sheet just for the crew. Now, unlike Blades in the Dark, where is like you are either the cult, or you guys are the burglars, or you guys are the assassins, and then whatever your crew type is, which is like a class for your crew, kind of like pushes you towards what kind of jobs you're going to do. I didn't want to do anything like that because I know you guys are going to be runners, and I know you guys are going to be doing corporate espionage and stuff. So I didn't really feel the need to like specify any further with that. And again, I wanted to move away from that. It's about the crew, and I want it to be about the characters, and like the crew is just sort of going to be like a place to track like mainly like how much reputation do you guys have, like do other gangs respect you, or do they think you're a bunch of noobs, and heat, like how much heat have you guys gathered, how much attention from the cops do you have. Okay, so species, it's just going to determine some like a couple of traits. I don't know exactly how many I'm gonna go with. I have considered, like, I do think I want to add Goblin, because I think there's probably a lot of goblins running around in Neo Veilguard. Okay, so the attributes, effectively all stolen from, like, Vampire the Masquerade. One change I did make since the last one, so instead, like, intelligence determined both how good you were at, like, spells and spell casting and magic related stuff, and it determined how good you were at hacking. That seemed just a little too good for covering way too many things, so I decided to split that into mana, which is like your ability to interact with the magical world and cast spells, and then logic, which will be used for like hacking and stuff. Okay, so we got some example contacts here. All the skills, slightly just like condensed sort of version of the Vampire the Masquerade skills. And okay, your IDN, your identity. This is sort of like your sin number in Shadowrun. Now, like most runners, I assume, are going to have some number of fake identities and not use their real one. Though conceivably, you could use your real identity, but then you run the risk of having like your DNA get tracked or something, and you're either going to want to be like very very legit and like not get caught explicitly committing crimes or something if you're using your real identity, or you're gonna have to be clever with it to some extent. But I imagine most people are gonna have a fake identity, and then you can buy like a worse or better like you can either spend a whole lot of money to get a really convincing, like really accurate, really good looking fake ID, or you can like spend some money to buy a couple or like a handful of crappy IDs so you can sort of burn through them whenever you need to. Um, okay, so that was your identity. The traits. So these still need more to fill out. Yeah, these are just effectively going to be your like class features, if you will. So your aspects, your descriptor of your character. Everyone's gonna have like 5 main character traits. One of them is going to be your concept, so your main trait, like what you are, like I am an honorable dwarf who doesn't like committing crime. I don't know, something like that. And then like your well, like even more than that, it probably includes your occupation. Like I am an honorable ex dwarf cop who fell into this life of crime, something like that. And then you have your trouble, something that you struggle with. Maybe it's a gambling addiction or an obligation to a family member. Either some sort of vice or like your some sort of problem that you have. And then you just have like 3 general traits that are like just either just little quirks of your personality or the most defining features of like who you are as a person. Okay, so karma, this is the XP system. Effectively, whenever a bad thing happens to you, you accrue a karma, and then you can spend, once you get enough karma, you can spend it all to get a level up. So when you glitch, which is like when you botch, when you crit fail, you get a karma. I changed this. When you get harm, like are penalized from harm. Okay, so if you're compelled by your trouble or by one of your aspects, you can gain a karma. So if you are like addicted to gambling, and then you go on a mission, and instead of like doing your part of the job and like sneaking in through the back or whatever, you see a group of guys playing a hand of poker and you decide to hop in or something like that. So like you screw something up based on one of your flaws and you get a karma. And or you are penalized from harm. So basically so like with the sheet, you might get harm that's like you are bruised or battered or confused or scared or something, and then it'll give you like a penalty, and when you like suffer from that penalty, I'm now realizing with the change I made, I'm gonna have to change how the less effect works, but I guess I'll figure that out. But basically, you like so if you are confused or something, or let's say you've got like you got like shot in the leg or something, and you're trying to like run away from people, you are going to have a penalty to your roll from getting shot in the leg. So, and when you suffer from a penalty of that kind, you'll gain a karma for doing that. Okay, so yeah, you level up, and you go up in tiers instead of levels. Your crew advancement, so when you gain enough reputation, you can go up in your crew tier. So you start off with 0 rep because you never did any jobs, and no, you haven't made a name for yourself. And then by the time you do make a name for yourself, you do need to go on harder and harder and harder missions. Otherwise, you like stop gaining reputation from going on puny missions. But it forces you to take on like higher and harder level jobs if you want to like keep improving your crew. Improving your crew, you get to collect more turf, you get more city blocks, and then those city blocks have like buildings that you can use for different bonuses. Like you might get a warehouse that you can store more stuff in, or like a holding cell, or like a vault or something that you can use as a holding cell. Stuff vaguely along those lines. Edge, that's your stress. You can spend that to basically get bonuses on rolls, also like on flashbacks, which is probably the main way that you're going to be spending it. Read the sitch. You can get a bonus for asking these questions that you spend your edge on. Performing actions. So in Blades in the Dark, you like roll up to a max of 4d6, but I went with the Vampire the Masquerade. You go up to like 10d10 because there's just a lot of stuff like cybernetics and many more ways to like augment your characters and different ways that you can improve yourself. And also like different varying levels of equipment that you can have. So I just needed to give myself more room to actually work with like giving bonuses for having different cybernetics. So I needed to expand the range of like dice that you roll. But generally you make a roll. If it's like a risky thing that you're doing, which is like probably the most common thing that you're going to be asked to make a roll for, like getting into a firefight, shooting other people. You roll a bunch of dice. If you have like 4 in dexterity and 3 in firearms, you roll 7 dice. For each one that's a 7 or higher, you get a hit. The more hits you get, the better effect you have. If you get a like 0 or a negative number of hits from rolling a bunch of ones, then that's how you glitch. If you get more negative or more ones than you do hits. And pretty much vampire. You can assist people by spending edge. Group actions, another thing you can do. So like you all take the test and then you use the best result to figure out like how you guys do, but whoever led the action is gonna suffer an edge for everyone that like screws up. Okay, so consequences. Basically, whenever you suffer a consequence, whenever you don't get like 5 or more hits on a roll, something bad is gonna happen to you to some extent. Tons of stuff can happen. I think generally like harm is a common one for combat. I would imagine ticking clocks, like if you're stealthing and you fail, you're going to be moving up closer and closer to alerting the guards and such. You might make another faction upset. If you're like hacking or casting magic, you're likely going to be gaining some heat by alerting the the grid overwatch department as they like watch the different planes and the activity occurring on those different planes. So resist. Whenever anything occurs that you ever don't like, you can make a check to resist it. To resist like any consequence that you ever don't want to suffer. And you make a check to a corresponding attribute. And then if you fail, you always resist the consequence no matter what. But depending on how you do on this check, you are going to gain or lose a different amount of stress. So you're just going to spend a lot of stress to like either not alert the guards or to like not get shot or whatever. Generally, it reduces it by 1 level. So you would turn like getting like fatally shot into just getting like shot, and start bleeding out or something. or if you just get like grazed by a bullet and it would be like a minor lesser harm, then that might get turned into a nothing. Okay. So okay, yeah. Trauma. This is gonna be like generally how your character dies is by getting up to 4 trauma. And so like basically each time you run out of there's the wrong. Each time you run out of edge, each time you get reduced to 0, you get a trauma. Trauma. I'm still going back and forth whether or not there should be a way to reduce it, because I like the idea of having like either being able to use like a doctor or magic or something to like go into your brain and literally delete memories to like reduce your trauma. But obviously, if I do something like that, it's going to have to be extraordinarily hard or extraordinarily limited, like the amount of times that you can like reduce your trauma with something like that. Um, so yeah, so not exactly sure how I want to do that, but I do think I'm going to do something along those lines. But yeah, so getting to max trauma is usually how you're gonna like have your character get taken out. Um, okay. So magic is going to be risky because if you glitch, you might just accidentally rip a hole in a plane to a portal to another plane or something, and then have a demon pop out. Okay. So gear, it's all got a corporation that gear is tied to. Gear has got a cost, and then it requires an amount of load for you to carry it. So something neat that I do really like about Blades in the Dark is that you basically determine your load before the mission. Like, are you going in super light, just dressed up like a normal civilian, in which case you have very low load, or are you walking in like an operative, carrying a duffel bag and like wearing heavy armor, in which case you have a very high load. Then over the course of the mission, whenever you need an item, you just like check off that you have that item on you. But you know, if you have a very low load, you're gonna have a very small amount of items that you're gonna be able to choose from over the course of the mission. But again, you're gonna be quite inconspicuous. You're gonna just look like a regular dude. And on the other end of the spectrum, you might have a very high load, in which case, you know, you can bring tons and tons of stuff with you and basically always have whatever you need on you for the given circumstance. But you're going to be looking like a Armor 3 operator in Rainbow Six. Okay, so yeah, we got just... There's going to be lots of general, just random equipment and gear you can have on you. Apps are basically going to work like spells, but for hackers that only work against technology. So, you know, these can't like miscast. You're not accidentally going to like summon a demon on your location or something. But yeah, they are not as general and useful in all situations as magic is. Okay, drugs. There's definitely going to be lots of themes of drugs and stuff like that. Lots of people escaping reality through drugs. Toxins are going to be like poisons. Cyberware is just going to be lots of opportunities for you to augment your body with different cybernetics and stuff. But, you know, the more cybernetics you have, the more downtime you have to spend maintaining them and buying immunosuppressors and all of that stuff. You also will become like more hackable and susceptible to like EMPs and stuff like that. BioWare, you can just get, if you want like a troll liver, you know, if you want like a shark's olfactory bulb, you can just get these organs replaced that just do a better job than your classic whatever organs you're born with. I think these are just generally going to be like very like these are just going to kind of be like better cyber augments because like they can't really be hacked or anything. So I think generally this is just going to be like ludicrously expensive, but generally just like straight upgrades for your character that you can buy. Okay, drones. You know, if you want to just send in a robot to like kill people or hack something for you, you know, I think drones again that you're not gonna have to risk your own body, so you're not putting yourself at any risk when you send in your drone. But I think drones are just generally going to be really, really expensive. So if you ever let them get destroyed, it's gonna suck to get them replaced. And like, depending on how much money you actually make on a job, you know, you might be like straight up losing money if you send in a super expensive drone and then lose it. Okay, so magic items. I do want to have stuff like you can just get a +1 sword or something. So magic items, I think, are just much like BioWare, just going to be really, really, really expensive, but pretty much just a straight up upgrade for your character. Potions, scrolls, going to be one time use magic items effectively. Vehicles, you know, you're going to be able to either buy a bike or a motorcycle or a car, which probably going to help you if you ever need to escape very quickly or anything like that. And quality, you can just buy like higher quality stuff whenever the question of like just how good the thing that you bought is. Slang and lingo, you gotta have lots of slang. Lots of this is just stolen from Shadowrun because they did a pretty good job. I do. I believe in Shadowrun, they just use the term Chinese takeout. But I love Scalorian takeout as just as a description of some job having gone horribly gory and messy, like yeah, you know, someone using a shotgun to turn his brains into like a Scalorian takeout, stuff like that. I think that might be my favorite one. Um, Goblin job as just having used a bomb to just blow up, leaving no evidence in an area. I like that at one too. Okay, your load, the meta plane. So yeah, I kind of envision it as a kind of Tron uh, sort of thing. Maybe honestly, I think like the closest thing I've seen in media to how I kind of envision the meta plane is probably the like Futurama episodes where they go into the internet. There's just like giant glowing geometric shapes and people walking around, like, you know, online stores being like a physical sort of store you can like walk into and buy products in and stuff. Um, so you know, you can have some scenes of like people, or at least when people are interacting with the meta plane, you don't have to just describe it as a million numbers and letters just flashing on a screen, and you can actually like have scenes inside the meta plane when people are hacking and stuff. Okay, so hacking, I stole a lot of the terminology from Shadowrun, but whereas like hacking is like its own whole system of combat, if not possibly even more like complicated than combat in Shadowrun. This is just gonna be super duper duper dumbed down, where you're just like rolling a number against a target number, and you either succeed and you get to perform one of your apps, like a program of your app, or like you don't succeed, and you either like only partially get the effect or something along those lines. And when you hack, you can get dump shocked. So like if you get kicked out of the meta plane, it can like fry your brain. And depending on what level of a connection you had to the meta plane, it can be like if you are fully VR, fully inside, then getting dump shocked can be nearly lethal. But if you're just using your comm link and hacking through that, then dump shock is going to be very minor. But again, if you're trying to hack through your comm link, it's going to be extremely difficult. Whereas if you're trying to hack through your VR headset, you're going to have way more control, and it's going to be way easier for you to hack. Okay, so encounters. Now, in Blades in the Dark, there's very, very, very little to do with combat. Like, very little involvement with anything combat related at all. Even as far as to have this, like, whole lore reasoning of, like, when you kill a person, their, like, ghost pops out, and their ghost gets really, really angry and is super dangerous. And there's, like, a whole department of people that exist solely to, like, capture ghosts that get loose. So you're, like, really, really encouraged to not kill people if you can possibly help it in Blades in the Dark. Um, but I don't have anything like that in this world. So, like, there's going to just be lots and lots and lots of opportunities for you to, like, run around and kill people. So I imagine there's going to be a whole lot more of a focus on combat in this than in Blades in the Dark. But it's still not going to be, like, full on dungeon world, like running around with the explicit purpose of running around and, like, killing a bunch of enemies. I think combats and killing enemies is more so going to be a thing that happens when things start to go wrong in a job. Like, I don't think you ever just start off with, like, getting into combats. So I was thinking of, instead of using the Blades in the Dark, well, they don't have anything. So I was going to go in the using the dungeon world powered by the Apocalypse sort of combat rules, which I generally sort of like. I've stolen most of that. I've got the 16, the infamous 16 HP dragon here, but it's going to be running off of the clocks and ticks, and I don't think there's going to be any separate damage roll. You're just going to work with, like, however many hits you achieved on your roll to determine, like, the amount of damage you deal. Also, Dungeon World, there's rules for, like, if you are, like, depending on how many people you have around you, and, like, uh goblins each, having their own individual HP, and, like, hitting stuff one by one, or, like, if you are in like a group combat, there's, like, separate rules for that. Whereas I didn't plan on, because I know in, like, Dungeon World, they kind of, I guess there's the expectation or the idea that you can use this with minis and, like, play with minis to determine who's adjacent to who and how many people are next to whoever. I didn't plan on going that in depth. I was going to, like, do just one step back from Dungeon World, where, like, if there's, like, just, like, a big group of goblins that you're fighting, that just counts as, like, a higher tier enemy rather than each being tracked individually. And yeah, I probably was not going to concern myself with keeping track of, like, who's adjacent to which person and, like, how many combatants are, like, involved specifically with each individual person. Um, but I do think this needed more than Blades in the Dark, and so I've sort of got, like, the HPs and the armor values. Because, yeah, I did realize, like, when a player does get, well, when they're, like, maxed out, or not even maxed out, when they've got their smart link auto aim adjustment cybernetic attached to their gun, and then they've got, like, just the Deadeye sharpshooter traits, and they got a 5 in dexterity and a 5 in firearms, and they've got expert shooting or whatever. They're just gonna end up getting a whole lot of hits. So in order to make, like, a dragon or an enforcement mech in Ed 209 threatening, I decided, like, armor is just gonna, like, subtract from the amount of hits. So, like, even then, a hyper, like, all in on combat guy could conceivably still get, like, 10 hits if like on average he's getting like around 5, then like he's not doing damage every single time, and there's still means for the enemies to like deal harm back to that attacker. So combat generally just going to be like a determination of, or determined by, what level of stuff are you doing versus like what equipment they have. So like if you are just running in unarmed against like a Humvee with a machine gun, then you're not going to have any chance. You're just like, that is just not a combat that you're like conceivably even capable of winning. And vice versa, if you have like a heavy machine gun on a Jeep and you're fighting unarmed schmucks, then there's no rolling involved. You just win that combat. But then when things get closer, like if you have like a pistol and you're in a firefight against someone with like assault rifles or something, then you're gonna have like, that's gonna sort of be a desperate combat, but it's not gonna be impossible. So stuff like that. All right, so clocks again, just stolen from Blades in the Dark. When you are in a low security facility, then you can end up making a lot more mistakes before you get caught. And if you're in like a high security facility, then if you can make very, very few mistakes before you get caught or before you alert the guards. Flow of play. So I just DM sets the scene. Players describe like what they want to do. Then if the DM decides that there is a potential consequence to the players doing what they want to do, then there is a roll involved, and then we figure out the results of the roll and what that means for the scene. And in that the players can use all their abilities and spend their edge and all of that. So downtime. So I do like that there's this very natural sort of like pacing tool in the game, where you guys are either like going on missions, which is almost like the D&D equivalent of combat. Like you might spend an hour, like in D&D you might spend an hour doing a combat. In Storm of the Matrix, Blades in the Dark, you might spend an hour going on a mission. And that's when you are like making your rolls to overcome obstacles and yada 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 yada. And then in like D&D, when you're done with the combat, there might be an hour of you guys running around talking to NPCs, doing whatever. That is like the downtime in Blades in the Dark, where you guys are either preparing for your next mission, talking to NPCs, doing all that yada yada yada. So yeah, just like a natural sort of like, there's either the high intensity, like you're on a mission, things can go wrong, etc. And then there's like the low stakes, like time to chillax. So I realized like D&D and Blades in the Dark both have similar sort of like pacing, like in that regard, that you're either like, you got your hour of action, your hour of combat, and then your hour of just like walking around talking to people. But I do think in like Blades in the Dark that like 1 hour of action and doing things, just a whole lot more happens than that 1 hour of combat in D&D. That's like hyper granular and hyper like zoomed in on every couple of seconds of what's happening. So yeah, okay. So that was downtime. Yeah, your payoff. Actually, I think I'm gonna move. I don't know why I originally had upkeep at the bottom. But yeah, so you get your payment for your job, and then you guys have to either pay if you guys are in someone else's territory, someone else's turf, then you either have to like pay them off just for the rights to exist, basically, and to be able to commit crimes there. Or you are gonna have to pay for your like cybernetics and your immunosuppressants and all that stuff that you need in order to not like have your body reject your implants and start like you know, suffer some horrible infection or something. Then you're going to accrue some amount of heat from your job that you did. If you guys killed a lot of people and used a lot of magic and hacking and bombs, you're probably going to get a whole lot of heat. Or if you just did everything very quietly and you ended up being able to not kill anyone and you did everything as safely as possible, you're going to get very little heat. Then you're going to see what entanglements have occurred. This is sort of just like an abstraction of just all the sort of things that come up from running a crime organization, all the like problems that you have to deal with. Um, Generally, if you have very high heat and very high wanted level, these entanglements are going to be very, very harsh. Like the police might actually come to try to arrest you. This is also um, where the like convergence from the grid Overwatch department can occur, where like you know if you've just gone way too deep and you've accrued way too much heat, then you know the G-men are gonna be you know stuck on you. But if you're just very low in heat, very low in wanted, then you might just have to deal with like very low level like goons or thugs or other criminals or something, and not necessarily risk like any of the players getting arrested or anything. Um, then downtime activities. This is the players actually being able to recover from the previous missions or start making preparations for the next mission. Stuff along those lines. Okay. Activities upkeep. Okay. Cost of living. So you're not actually gonna have to like pay for your cost of living. It's just gonna sort of be determined by how much money you guys have. That'll determine like what kind of conditions you can live in. So other stuff that you might have to pay for your upkeep. If you want a like a trauma, you can get like health insurance basically. So if you ever get like knocked out during a mission or if you get like killed or something, then you can hire a team that like basically you can hire a like an ambulance service that'll come and like pick you up and like save you. And give you medicine and all that. Okay, so downtime activities, yeah, you can acquire assets, recover, start working on a project. You can like bribe people or intimidate people to reduce your heat, or you can train to level up. So the 10 districts of the city of Veilguard. Um, Now this is like the map that I've thrown together. I should not have gone for the jagged edges because I do imagine there's like two giant walls on like both of these sides of the mountains, but it's Vale, a valley that the city is located in. Evercrest is where all like the CEOs are all in like giant underground complexes under this mountain. But generally, it's just all the richest people up here, and then as you move down here, you get to the poorer and poorer areas. So Eagle Dare Heights, this is like all skyscrapers and like where CEOs live in their penthouses and stuff. Um, the Gardens, this is your burb claves, your suburbs. The execs, this is offices and laboratories and stuff like that. Elf Town is your kind of Chinatown. You know, forget it, Jake. It's Elf Town. Uh, the Fort Dealer. This is the market area. This is bunches of mega malls and stuff where people go to buy and sell stuff. The Underdocks. So there's not an actual like classic docks in that like there's like a sea or whatever, but there's like a giant underground aquifer that is used to like transport goods. The Sprawl, this is just your slums. Just like a giant tons of like mega arcs, like mega arcologies, like these giant mega apartment buildings that you can live your entire life in that have like hospitals and grocery stores built into them, and they just have like 500,000 people just living inside them. Maybe not 500,000, but like multiple tens of thousands of people living inside these like giant mega complexes. Lost Ham, this is just like ruins. This has just been totally desecrated and destroyed, and like effectively like post-apocalypse city land. Waste Side, this is like the industrial area, all the factories and everything. Rustland, this is like a company town. This is where all the miners in Mount Morn live, which is like probably like one of the biggest sources of like labor in the city, is just all the people that work in Mount Morn to mine cobalt and silicon and all the different various metals and everything that people need. So down here you got Rangal, the human kingdom, or I guess at this point like a province um, in the United Realms of Amar. Then the wastes of Oktor. This is just straight up wastelands, desert, radiation stuff. Each of the different districts have one main gang. Trajum Society and Eagle Dare Heights, it's a bunch of rich people, and there's like rich wizards that try to pull shenanigans here. The Heads, they very much so try to target the middle class for their members. The Daughters of Anara are in Elftown. We Are, the hackers, are in the execs, the offices. The Hundanites, the like super crazy guys, they're part of the reason why Lost Ham is the way it is now. It's just straight up like ruins. The Underducks, the Sicilians, they do all the they got their hands in all the pies of all the different trade that goes through the aquifer. The Sprawl, the Burner Boys. Well, this one's got like two gangs that are sort of like warring over it. I should say all the gangs are present in like all the districts to some extent, but this is like where their headquarters and like where they're the head of their organization is. So the Burner Boys are the main gang of the Sprawl, but the Vicissa dudes are like the up and comers there. The Rustlands, owned by like the guilds, are doing all their union stuff in the Rustlands. The Fort Dealer, the Seven Oni Alliance, they have like, they're just present in all the malls and trade stuff that's going on there. Waste Side, this is where Muways and Nomads are, and like where they try pulling their, imagine lots of like terroristy stuff against different factories and stuff like that. Okay, and I do think, so each of the districts are going to have like a little blurb that like affects how like doing jobs in that area will go. Also, like when we do the character creation and crew creation, the players will choose one of these districts to base their crew out of, and it's kind of gonna be a stand-in for the crew class, because it's gonna do a great deal to determine like mostly what kind of jobs you're gonna go on depending on what kind of area you're in. Okay, yeah, entanglements, the session arc. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is the structure of a campaign. I do imagine that these campaigns are going to be a lot shorter than like your classic D&D campaign. Like maybe like 8-10 sessions or so for a full campaign. So yeah, so first couple of sessions, I think it's going to be hard to not to some extent sort of like railroad players, just so they get some sort of idea as to like what kind of like world it is, and like the different various factions and everyone to play off of. So I think like to start off, more so just like have like a list of missions that are as like jobs that are like offered to them that they can go on, and then once they start once they like figure out the different like factions and the corporations that are nearby, then they can start dictating what kind of like missions and who they want to like target from there. And then I imagine to some extent every character is gonna have to get tied in some way to like one individual person or organization that has like screwed all of them over, to sort of act as like a BBEG, if you will, just so that all the players are aligned in like one similar goal that can be accomplished hopefully by the end of the campaign. Um, as for a session itself, there's no you don't sit around planning through every single contingency of the entire session or of the entire like heist or mission or whatever. All you need to do is plan out your approach, and then everything else can be figured out in the middle of the mission. Okay, so these are just a bunch of different examples of various different parts that can be combined in different ways to create different missions. Okay, then everything else is just like brainstorming the stuff that I've been thinking about. Okay, yeah, no, that's about it. Alrighty, I will see you later.